They are not cute anymore. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome to the Attleboro School Committee meeting of Monday, February 10th, 2020. You notice that this meeting is being electronically recorded. Tonight we'll start again with our spotlight event. I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Regan.
Thank you, Chairman. What I'd like to do is introduce Ms. Naomi Cordell. She could come up to the table.
Sure.
She's here tonight to speak to us about the Garden Club.
Now I know you're saying, who cares? What does that have to do with us? But it does, really. Part of the mission of the Garden Club is education. And it has always been sort of taken as we educate our own members and how we do this and that. But that's not what it really says. It says with the community. The children are our community. So, this year, and I should have been here in November, but I fell and broke my ankle, so that didn't work. We gave books to the libraries of each school, something to do with gardening, and I chose the books. I don't know most of you. I taught here for 36 years, so I have everything from grade 7 through 12 at one point in my life. And my children all went to school here. Now they're all propagating the world. And, yeah. But I chose books for the elementary school particularly that were a little bit below grade level, like maybe a second grade reading level, because for children, if it's easy to read, they'll read it. If it's a struggle, they'll get through the first page and give it a toss. So these are books that children can read with their families. I will tell you about them. Some of you will laugh. The Attleboro Garden Club actually is responsible for civic beautification. So we take care of the Rose Garden in Capron Park. We take care of Gilbert Perry Square. You'll notice that's always planted in the summertime. We take care of the gardens around the library. We just put in the new gazebo in the Memorial Garden that's in Capron Park, and if you haven't seen it, you should go over and look. It's a white gazebo instead of the brown one, so if you know somebody who's getting married, actually the week after we dedicated it, somebody got married in that gazebo. We've done that. We decorate the library in December with appropriate decorations for that kind of thing. And once a year, usually in April, we have a meeting that is open to the public where it's something that everybody in town would like to know about, as well as just Garden Club members. We have 2 meetings a month. We have a daytime group that meets on Tuesdays, the first Tuesday of the month, and we have a nighttime group that meets on the second Wednesday of the month. So we're having a meeting in 2 days in the evening. You're gonna laugh, on making nosegays. You know, those little plastic things that you get in a corsage. Well, if you save those, you can put little flowers, and we're giving them to people we like. So, anyway, let me tell you about the books that I got for the children. So for the high school, I got a book called, because I didn't want to try to fight the science people on that kind of stuff. Ours was really about fun and what you can do. So the book was called Trowel and Error. And it has organic remedies, plants, not cannabis, but plants that kids can grow that have medicinal properties. We're not encouraging them to grow the other stuff. And shortcuts and tips for the garden. So it's written for high school kids or adults. The middle schools all got the same book. It's called Roots, Shoots, Buckles, and Boots. And it's really to plant, for parents to plant with a child. It's the has the top 20 plants for children, which means they're things that'll grow fast because kids don't want to wait for something to come up 3 months from now that's not interesting. And it has specific kinds of gardens. There's a pizza garden, how to grow a pizza garden, and how to grow a medicine chest. So there are theme gardens, and they tell you what plants would go into those. For the tiny people, we have Oh Say Can You Seed, which is a Dr. Seuss book, and Thing 1 and Thing 2 talk about pollination and explain through Dr. Seuss kind of language what germination and pollination. And it has diagrams. One of the schools got a book called Up in the Garden and Down in the Dirt. So that one talks about the leaves and the trees and the flowers and the fruit that are above ground, and then what's happening underground with the bugs and the worms and the snakes and the critters and all of that. Lola, one of them is Lola Plants a Seed, and Lola likes to read poetry. So this is a book that she reads with her mommy that have poems about gardening and talking about gardening. For the little tiny people in the preschool, it was, what was it, From Seed to Plant? Oh. Plant the Tiny Seed. And the book is written so that when you show them in the pictures, it says clap. So they all get to clap. Wave to the plant, do things so that the little ones get involved in the doing of it. Several of the books, I was supposed to go read them. I had made arrangements with all the schools to come read the book to the second grades. That didn't work. But my co-president went and read at Hill Roberts. One of our other members read at Willett School. At one of the other elementary schools, and both of those ladies work, so it was a little rugged on their schedules. They took the days off to go do this. At one of the schools, the assistant principal stepped in and did the reading, and at one of the schools, the librarian did the reading, and it was just nice. It was a good activity. Several of the schools said, we would like to start a garden, and Willett already has one. So they invited us to come play with them in the spring, and we're going back to help them plant. I've talked with all the ladies in the garden club, and they all lit up like a light bulb when I said, well, go play with the first and second graders, planting seeds and so forth. I think it's good for kids to know where food comes from. I can remember as a child having my teacher say in elementary school, where does milk come from? And I said, the bottle. Where else? And we took a trip to a farm to see a cow because we lived in a city. Nobody ever saw a cow. It's good for them to see things grow. And it's good for them to know that they can do something sustainable. And all of our children should be eating fresher food and the pleasure you can get from digging in the dirt. Now, some of you may think, garden club, are you kidding? It's a bunch of old ladies in white gloves and big hats that pass tea. No, we play in the dirt. We're diggers. We get down in the dirt and do stuff. So we have a big plant sale in spring. If you are interested in things for your garden, you can come and buy plants from us. That's our big fundraiser of the year. It's in May, first weekend in May. So it's before Mother's Day. I can look at the kids. But you all have mothers or something. And so it's nice to give a plant to Mom. So we would like to be part of the community with the children. And so that's why I just wanted to come and this will be a sustainable thing. This wasn't a one-shot deal. Every year during American Education Week, we will be giving a book to the library. because we think that's important. And I thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Oh, Mr. Domenici, did you have a question?
I was just wondering where she's going.
Oh, I'm sorry. Disappeared.
Well, less of a question and more of just
Sure.
just a thanks. I mean, we talk about our vision at the Attleboro Public Schools being a community centered around education, right?
I was reading that.
Right, and so, we talk about things like opportunities for outreach to the community, and here's an example of the community reaching in, and we love that, and I think we do have pockets of that, but I think that's an area that as some of us are working on the 5-year plan, the next 5-year plan. Those are things we like to look for. So I speak for myself. I'm sure others would agree that these are the types of things we would absolutely encourage and try to foster.
Well,
And
they're the kinds of things that all the civic groups should be involved with. These are our children.
I couldn't say it
My
better.
children went here. Rob and I were just talking about when he was little, he was on a float. I was a class advisor, and we had a float for Thanksgiving. And he and my daughter were the football player and the cheerleader. They were 5. Dressed up in these little cute outfits. He fell asleep during the game. It was like, but, yeah, what do you want from a 5-year-old that's been riding on the back of an open truck? While I was like going, oh my God, they're gonna fall off. Heavens.
Well, not only do I thank you personally for what you're doing for our students, I also thank you for that story.
I just told them, I said, I have the picture of them on the float.
It'll wind
I
up
have
on
to
Facebook
find
sometime
it,
soon,
and
Oh,
that's all.
please come back with that.
I will.
Mr. Storrs?
I got one for you. So first of all, thank you for everything that you and your group is doing. It's wonderful. But if somebody wants to join your group,
Oh, easy, just come.
and where would that be?
The Florence Sweet House. The Tuesday morning meetings start at 11:30. The evening meetings, I think they're at 6, maybe 6:30. I don't remember. I don't go to all the evening ones because I do all the day ones. If you show up for the daytime meetings, we have lunch. And the ladies put together a lunch, and it's very nice. If you're just visiting us, that's fine. If you want to, the meeting in April is open to the community. We get a cultural arts grant, and so that's free and open to the community. If you want to join, we do have dues that we pay every year because we have speakers who come in. Last year's open meeting to the public was about pollinators because so many people are concerned now about bees and butterflies and things like that. And so a gentleman came in and talked about pollinators, but our last one just last week was on the winter garden and things you can grow in the winter that still have color. So you're not looking at dead grass and sticks all the time. There's something to look at that has some color to it. So,
Thank you, Green.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, next we have our Student Advisory Council update. For that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Rooney, Ms. Graver.
For our SAC shoutouts, Wamsetta Math Counts team placed second at the Southeastern competition. Brian Sissio scored his 1,000th point in basketball this past week against Oliver Ames. Our AHS band members had a great performance at the Bridgewater State Honor Band Festival.
In our elementary schools, Hyman Fine is having their Dine to Donate at the Hungry Goats Kitchen at the barn in the New England Sports Village on February 21st, all day. That's the Friday of break, so 2 Fridays from now. And at Studley, they're having For the Love of Literacy and Math for kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade on February 13th, so this Thursday at 6 p.m.
For our middle schools, Wamsetta will be having their PTO meeting reviews of Portrait of a Graduate tomorrow, and then Quell will be having theirs the following day. At Attleboro High School, Friday, or not Attleboro High School, Attleboro Public Schools, on Friday, we'll be having an early release because of professional development, and then we, as juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. On February 24th, we'll be having a scheduling day for next year for our classes.
So for juniors and seniors, prom is coming up, and the Dance Card, a local nonprofit, loans free prom dresses to those looking for dresses, and we'll host a pop-up in the pit at the high school on Thursday the 13th from 2:30 to 8 p.m. For more information, you can see class Instagram pages or the Dance Card Attleboro on Facebook. And that's all we have.
Great. Thank you. Next, our business agenda tonight. Start with the superintendent's report. Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to give the committee an update on the Student Opportunity Act. The state released some guidance last week, as they promised they would. And while most of that is the details on the bureaucratic side of the act, the plan that we have to submit, and the forms we have to fill out, there were some important pieces of information. From a process point of view, the committee does have to, what's the verb they're using? Certify our plan before April 1st. So we have put that on the agenda for the 23rd. So we'll be bringing our plan forward to you for your consideration at that time. You will not be impressed by that plan, which is really what I want to get to, because as we said, the Student Opportunity Act has been a bit disappointing for us in terms of its impact. And I thought that the materials that the state provided really drove home the reality that we're facing here in Attleboro and how our situation is just different than most. It is true that our neighbor communities got significantly less than us, and I know that they assumed that meant that we were doing well. As I explained to them, that's not the case, and I thought that the information provided really brings it home. So I wanted to share with you one of the documents that they provided. As a setup, though, 80% of the money in the Student Opportunity Act is going to 37 districts, right? And we are one of the districts on the list of the 37, right? So the way that the state is handling the compliance part of the Student Opportunity Act, we all have to, every district, whether you're getting nothing or something, you have to submit a plan on how you're spending the money. And so the state has created two different versions of the plans that have to be submitted by all districts, what they're calling a short form and a long form. And they have, I believe, somewhat arbitrarily picked $1.5 million as the cutoff. So if you're getting less than $1.5 million in Chapter 70 funds, you're doing the short form. And if you are receiving more than $1.5 million, you have to do the long form. Our number is $1.7 million, so we are, again, on that list of 37 communities. We're part of the group that make up 80% of the extra funding. We're in that group, and we have to do the long form. But I wanted to show you, and again, I should probably do a bit more explaining. Thank you. So, as you can see from the letterhead, this is straight out of DESE, and I know you can't see that, but that's probably in my best interest right now. The first column is the names of the communities, so those are the 37 communities. The second column is what they're calling year zero, so that's your baseline for last year. So this is how they're measuring growth from. The next column is the amount of money that each community is getting in Chapter 70. So that's ranked by the amount. So I guess Lynn is the big winner in the Student Opportunity Act. And you'll notice that, not that you can read it, but we're not on, you don't see us yet. I'm going to have to scroll down to find Attleboro. But what's really important for this purpose of this discussion is the next column, the yellow column. The box at the top is yellow. That's the term in there is recommended maximum Chapter 70 amount towards ongoing expenses. So the state recognizes that to maintain current level services from one year to the next requires more money, right? There is inflation in costs, and so some money is needed to just maintain. So you're not getting anything extra with an increase.
And so they say that they've calculated the rate of inflation at 2.4%. So what they're telling districts is you may spend up to 2.4% of your total budget on ongoing expenses. And so the number in the yellow column is just the number that it's basically the same number as the second column, to be honest with you. It's the maximum. So you could spend up to this much money on new stuff, right? But then the green column is the amount that is left over when you take out 2.4%, right? So that's the amount of money that in your plan you have to account for. They're saying, all right, we're giving you X, but 2.4% over what you had last year can go towards ongoing expenses. So you don't really need to explain that because you're just paying for last year. But anything above that amount is what you have to explain. And this is where I make my point. Is that working for everybody?
One more.
One more?
Thank you.
Sure. So, again, yellow's the maximum, green's the minimum. So Lynn, this is last year. This is the amount over last year. The maximum and the minimum. So you will find Attleboro down here, right? There's our 1.74. And you'll notice when we see what we have to account for, they gave us an asterisk. We're one of 3 out of the 37 that get an asterisk. And all that means is that our amount is less than 2.4%. So in black and white on this chart, the state's admitting that they did not give us enough to even make their own stated rate of inflation.
Did I read that right, that Lynn got 24 million above World War Zero?
Yeah, so
You got 30 million.
Wait, they got 30 million, but that's 24 million above the 2.4%.
Yeah.
yep. Yep. You'll notice Brockton. It's another big winner. We knew that they would be. So, I mean, there are significant dollars to, these communities at this end of the scale. But when I say that, we did not fare as well as we had hoped, I mean, this is why. Our total does not even equate to their own stated rate of inflation. So when I tell you that the number they gave us is not enough to deliver level services, seems like they would agree that that's what they would expect. And that's the reality that we're facing.
Mr. Geddes?
So just to be clear, this is the list of all 37. So if I'm reading that, us being fourth to the bottom, from the bottom puts us at the 34th in terms of the actual amount of Student Opportunity Act money we're getting.
Yeah, so you'll notice that, so this is the cutoff for the long form, and that's every district that's getting more than $1.5 million in Chapter 78.
And so because we're not getting anything above that 2.4%, does that mean we do not actually have to, we still have to certify a plan, but we don't have to justify any additional money because we're not getting any in some
So
ways.
we're not sure how to fill out their
long form if we're not
form,
getting anything.
given that there's nothing to explain. We're making inquiries as to what they would like us to do with this.
How did they come to the 2.4%? Because I know we try and cap it at 2.5%, but that there are issues, specifically health insurance is the one that is in my head that we have no control over. That's often beyond that. How do they come to the 2.4%?
In the guidance, they just said that that's the number that they've determined is the rate of inflation in the Commonwealth. So it's not clear to me how they arrived at that. But I mean, with a number with 2.4, I assume they didn't just, pick a random number. I mean, that's a strange number to pick. So they must have calculated that in some way, but I don't have any sense of what their process was. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Mark.
Any other questions or comments? So the 23rd, our next meeting is when or the
23rd of March.
March 3rd, 23rd, okay.
So at our next meeting, we'll certainly inform the committee of anything we learn about what our responsibilities are. But, again, communities that only got $30 per student, right? I mean, they are hopping mad. They have to fill out a form. I mean, it's the short form. But they know that they have to submit it. I mean, every community has to submit a form. So we know we have to submit a form. And right now they're telling us that we have to do the long one because we're above 1.5 million, which I do believe is an arbitrary number. We're not capable of explaining how we're going to spend the money because there isn't any. So we're not quite sure what to do with that, and we'll let you know if we get some answers on that.
So, Mrs. Storrs?
Just if you could remind us, when we first heard about this act, what was the money that we were hoping to get as compared, I just want to put that out there, as compared to what we did get?
So I'm not sure how far we are from what we would have expected this year. But we were hoping for a total in around the, let's say, $7 or $8 million number, Mr. Furtado? 8, yeah. But again, that's over 7 years. So they actually come close to that. There are a couple things that weren't fully implemented. They did not do 1/7 of the increase for economic status students, right? So low-income students. Their justification for that is they did change the way they count kids. So the method for counting kids is more inclusive. So we should have more students who qualify to be counted in that group. And because of that, not just us, but across the state, that's a lot more money that has to go out because there's more students being counted. So they said that they couldn't afford to do both 1/7 of the increase that's required and increase the number of kids that are being counted. So they just did part of the increase and did the change of the counting. So that is less than we would expect as a result of that. That really just is an indication of them saying that they just didn't have enough money to cover both of those things. Are there any other unfulfilled parts of the? I don't remember. That's the big one. The economic status.
Mr. Gaddis?
Is it worth? Because I mean, we mentioned Lynn was over 24 million. Looks like Leominster is as low as 69,000. So, assuming that's the spectrum, is it worth seeing where we are in relation to like median and average totals, and using the long form to maybe demonstrate if we had gotten more money, here's what we would have explained as to what our plan with that extra money would have been. I mean, I don't know how much you've looked at the long form to see if there's any room for growth, but since we're one of the three that are in this position, is it worth saying, you didn't give us any money, but if you had, here's what we would have done.
I don't
with it.
think the form is going to persuade them to think differently about it, right? I mean, it's just a formula, and they've tweaked the formula, and it spits out what it spits out.
Okay.
So we're trying to better understand why we're such an outlier, right? So again, there are literally 3 districts in the Commonwealth who landed where we landed. I know we're special, but
I'm surprised.
I'm not sure how that
Boston is
played
one of
out
the
for
other
us on
ones.
this one.
Yeah, I'm surprised Boston is one of the other 2. It's
Yeah,
rare.
well, you'll notice that their increase is not that significant.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised because that was one of the big concerns, was that Boston was going to get too much of the share, but it doesn't seem to have played out.
Instead, they give it to Lynn.
I think
I mean, if you
most
think
of-
about that, it's crazy, right? That Boston only is getting $100,000 more than we are. They're a little bit bigger.
They also get a whole lot more opportunity, I think, to get revenue into the school budget than an Attleboro.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
that's probably a factor.
Yep. Yep. So, and part of the problem that we're facing here locally that has nothing to do with any of this is that increases in out-of-district tuitions, have caused us to not be able. Remember in December when we talked about our estimate. We would be under 3% if it were just the things we control, but it's the things we don't control. We're optimistic about health insurance getting better than the number we used in December, so that'll help. And out-of-district tuitions, which is the lion's share of what puts us over and causes the problem that we're facing. That's always a volatile situation, so we'll continue to track it, and hopefully that'll break in our favor. And there's hope that the legislature is going to make some changes as well, so that might help. So these are all the reasons why I think it would be far too early to hit the panic button. But when we try to communicate to the community that this did not result in us not becoming flush with cash to spend frivolously, I think that this particular chart that they handed out helps to make that point.
Mr. Manici.
Just because I can't see the top again. The second column, that the 77,760,000, that's considered our net school spending number for this year,
You're talking about the second column?
or is that all right? So that's actually fiscal year 20.
The first one is 20, so that's the current year.
That's
But they're
our
calling year zero.
what they're calling year zero. That's
That's
what
the baseline.
that's what our current baseline is, and so the expectation is we're going to get an additional 1.7 over that for this year
In Chapter 70.
in Chapter 70 funding.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just tying it together.
Added to that is also the local contribution,
Sure,
which is a separate number.
sure. And the local contribution is typically a number that Jesse will factor in
Yeah.
that they should
For the
contribute.
total foundation budget.
Right. And I know that we, at least over the last several years, the city has committed to spending above their piece. I know it's early, but I was trying to just fully understand where what our total gap is. Like, if we were expecting a roughly around, I don't know, I think it was around 700,000 more maybe from Chapter 70 funds at a minimum. Is that the number
So
that we're working on?
we've set a meeting with City Hall for the last week of February, and at that time we'll have a clear indication as to what we can expect from them. So it's a little bit hard to know
Okay.
exactly what kind of situation we're in, but all indications suggest to me that we should anticipate a similar commitment to what we had last year, and with that commitment and this funding based against the estimate that we gave in December that we already know has changed and will continue to change, and we'll update when we do our budget presentation in the end of March, early April, right? But based on the one that we calculated, we're $1 million off.
Okay.
Okay. I wanted to update the committee also on the reconfiguration plan. We will be completing our tour of the elementary schools in meeting with the faculty after school this week. We've done 3 of the schools and we have 2 more. To be quite honest, each building is different and it's a different set of concerns, and the plan affects different schools differently. So, that's has been interesting to hear each school with its questions and its concerns. We'll be giving a survey to all of our elementary schools right after the break, and then we will also be scheduling a tour of our PTOs at night to meet with families in March. So we'll be scheduling those soon. And that's just the point I wanted to make is, regardless of what the teachers come back with in terms of the results of that survey, we're going to do the tour in March, even if the teachers have a negative response at this stage, because I feel like we owe it to families to give them a chance to weigh in, and we also want to go around and relay where we are and how we landed where we landed. So we'll be committing to those meetings regardless of what the teachers say. And then after that, we'll be putting our finishing touches on the whole thing and bringing it to you for consideration later this spring.
Does the reorganization plan is that just for the elementary schools, or is that for redrawing the boundaries, I guess, for who goes to what?
So the reconfiguration plan is just how we order the grades in our elementary schools, but we are redistricting. And in fact, one of the things that we really realize as a result of talking to families is that there's no reason to wait to start the redistricting process at our middle schools, because the middle schools are unchanged by the reconfiguration plan. So we can't redistrict the elementary schools until we know which configuration we're going to go with. But we've begun looking at the middle schools already, because we've got 3 middle schools and they're not changing, and they're going to be grades 5 to 8 either way. So we're looking at that right now, and we're in a process that, how long do you think that's going to take us, Mr. Furtado?
We have some initial numbers for the middle schools now.
Yeah, so that process has already begun, and we'll certainly be bringing that to the committee for consideration as soon as we have enough information that it's worth sharing.
Are we moving kids that are already in the middle schools to different middle schools, or will it just be?
So the goal would be to come up with a plan that is phased in so that families don't have to switch middle schools.
What about the obvious question of a student who would be going to middle school after the redistricting, whose older sibling is already at a school he or she wouldn't be going to?
Yeah, in those situations, the preference would be to give those families the opportunity to choose which outcome they prefer. Okay. There won't be a lot of them. I'm anticipating that the tweaks to the districts for the middle schools are really be in the margins. We're not changing much. So while there have been shifts in demographics, and this is an opportunity to even enrollment out at those schools a little bit, the vast majority of families in the district overall will not be affected by that process, unless you want to give a little. Yeah, okay. Got that right.
Okay.
All right. Just a couple of facilities issues. If you noticed, they're already up, starting the 3rd floor on the steel. It's getting tall out there. As I look at that giant steel structure, I try to remind myself that Parisians hated the Eiffel Tower when they first built it. So perhaps we'll all see the beauty of the high school in the end. The 4th floor they're beginning that by the end of the week, and then it won't be long before they're moving on to a new section of the building. So that's how the project will go in terms of steel erection. They start on a section, they bring it all the way up to the 4th floor, and then when they're done with that, they move on to another section. Is it 4 phases, or are there more than 4 phases in terms of that?
There are more.
Yeah. So they've broken the building up into groups, and this first section we're nearing completion within 2 weeks, right? Yeah. It's pretty exciting, and it's impressive. The other thing I wanted to tell you is that the OPM for the roof projects at Brennan and Wamsutta is being selected by the Municipal Building Council next Wednesday. So that continues to make progress, and we're very excited. It'll be nice when, for the first time, those schools have non-leaky roofs. Then the final thing on my updates is just that the city is engaging in its process to replace the budget director, and the interviews for that, I believe, are tomorrow. And Mr. Furtado is a member of that screening committee, so we're very fortunate and appreciate his inclusion. Obviously, the relationship between the schools and the budget director is very, very important. So we're glad that he's able to provide his insight into that process. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Regan to tell you a little bit about how we're doing on developing a new strategic plan.
Thank you, Superintendent Sawyer. To date, we've had 7 meetings. And we have school committee members on the team. We have community members, parents, educators, and students. We have a couple of high school students. We have one meeting scheduled for this week, and then we have 2 more that are scheduled for March. Right now we have 3 working groups. One group is focused on the structure and the processes that are around the actual plan itself. The next group is looking at the mission, vision, and essential beliefs, really taking a close look at the wording that's there to see if there's anything that needs to be changed or anything that needs to be added. And finally, the third working group is looking at the goals. And so right now there are 3 broad topics for the goals. One is centered around student learning, the second one is around family and community engagement, and the third one is around equity. And we plan to continue to develop the plan and start actually the writing process through March and April. Go through some drafts and revisions and sharing it with different community groups and different stakeholders, and be able to present that to the full committee in June. So we are making some headway, and we're moving forward.
And then our last piece of business tonight, I would just ask consideration by the committee to approve this year's MOA with Tri-County.
And just for the sake of reminding members and introducing it to our newer members, this is an agreement with Tri-County whereby we can send some of our students who are interested, who choose a CTE program that's not offered at Attleboro High, but that is offered at Tri-County. This is a contract we enter into them whereby they agree to take our students. If they're accepted, they go and they enter into a program. If they continue on in that program, they can continue on at Tri-County. We pay them a tuition, which is the state set tuition amount, and we also provide transportation. Any questions or comments? So at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the proposed memorandum of agreement with Tri-County for year 2020 to 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much, and that concludes my report.
Next, we have our minutes. The minutes were circulated with your packet from our January 27th, 2020 meeting. One correction to the minutes that were circulated. Mr. Hill and Mr. Dominici were correctly noted as absent. However, the minutes also listed them as present, so the minutes will be revised to remove them from the section marked present. Motion to accept with those edits.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion, changes, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Consent agenda, motion to accept a donation in the amount of $253 from the Attleboro Varsity Booster Club to the class of 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a cash donation from the Attleboro Farmers Market to the Attleboro High School for Community Connections.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a cash donation from the Attleboro Farmers Market to the Attleboro High School for Student Council.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept the donation in the amount of $122.01 from the Wamsutta Middle School PTO for art supplies for Miss Medeiros' class.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $9,535 from the Feinstein Foundation as broken down in my memorandum dated February 6, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the donation of $30.55 for students' remaining school lunch balance from Thomas Maltby to the Attleboro Public Schools lunch program to help outstanding student lunch balances.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve a day field trip proposal for 120 8th grade students to attend an end-of-the-year trip to Canopy Lake Park on June 12th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve an overnight field trip proposal for 120 middle school students to go to Washington, D.C. from June 7th to June 10th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve an overnight field trip proposal for 120 middle school students to go to Washington, D.C. from June 8th to June 11th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That concludes our consent agenda tonight. Next, we have our subcommittee reports. Teaching and Learning, Ms. Johnson's going to provide an overview of the last meeting, which was on December 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we had a large agenda that night. The first thing we reviewed was the profile of a graduate and revision of the exit outcomes. We welcomed Ms. Andy Summers as a guest from Grade School Partnerships. She has been working with the lab and supporting them to review and update the current exit outcome measures. The purpose of this is to measure the success post-graduation, as well as strengthen relationships between the community and schools. A draft document of the update was shared with the subcommittee, and we're honored to have been solicited for our responses and input on the questions outlined on the draft document. Prior to the final draft, the lab will be reaching out to other community members for their valuable input. We also had a guest, Ms. Medeiros, the Director of Special Education, joined the committee to give an overview of the Attleboro Public Schools Special Education Program Guide. This informative document has already been shared with family members. It's currently posted on the district website, and we thank Ms. Medeiros and her team for putting together this information. Any individuals interested in reviewing the current programs and they have not done so is encouraged to visit the district website. We also reviewed the latest program evaluation. The state does require districts to conduct program evaluations every 2 years. So we contracted with the New England Center for Children to evaluate the Insights program at Brennan Middle School. The assessment results were recently shared with the Insights staff and the school-based administration, and they were reviewed that evening with the subcommittee. The staff was commended for their high level of commitment to student progress, and while areas of growth were noted, the staff showed interest in incorporating the feedback to continue the support of their student successes. We also that evening reviewed the Brain-Based Learning Initiative, which is being led by Superintendent Sawyer. The Brain-Based Initiative applies brain science and reviews current brain development to optimize learning and student outcomes. For more information about this initiative, please visit the district website. And probably one of the most exciting things of the evening was an update regarding the Innovations Pathway Grant. The purpose of this grant is to provide students with coursework and experience in high-demand industries. Currently, that includes IT, life sciences, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, prior to graduation. The other purpose of this grant is to create strong partnerships with employers to provide opportunities for learning and experience in these high-demand industries. And the committee is very pleased that the administration is pursuing this impactful grant, and we are looking forward to the next update. And lastly, we were also updated on the current ELA pilot that is currently being overviewed by the administration. And a thank you to the teachers who have volunteered to participate in this pilot program. It was discussed in detail with the teaching staff at the last PD Development Day, and a survey of the teachers was conducted for their feedback. The administration reports that they are currently collecting all data from this survey, and they are expected to come to a decision soon regarding settling on one of these programs. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any questions? All right, next we have Policy and Personnel, which met on February 3rd. At this meeting, Mr. Storrs was elected Policy and Personnel Chairperson, and I will turn it over to him to report on the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep, so for the meeting started off with the election of the chairperson. Thank you to my colleagues for electing me as chair. Two major things that we looked at for the meeting was we looked at the January newsletter. Members probably received that from MASC in the mail. Numerous policies have been updated, and then the second portion was Section C. We continued with the General School Administration section. All of these policies were voted out of the subcommittee unanimously, so they all have a motion and a second, and they're going to go right up for debate. So the first one is policy IGA, which is curriculum development. The recommendation was to align it with mask. There was only minor wording changes. So is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next policy, IHAM, Health Education. The policy was already aligned, so we're looking to note the review date. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, policy JB, Equal Educational Opportunities. We wanted to align the policy as much as possible with MASC where we could, including the changing of the order of the listed references in the first paragraph, as well as the reference of the Mass General Law in the second paragraph. The administration felt that we should maintain the additional wording throughout the rest of the policy that was previously recommended by our legal representative and was previously approved by the committee. That wording provides additional guidance on admissions and how complaints are addressed. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, policy JC, attendance areas. We wanted to align with MASC. The policy was already mostly aligned. Minimal changes to get to full alignment was mainly the removal of the numeric statements in paragraph 2. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, policy JCA, assignment of students to schools. The policy, again, is already mostly aligned with MASC, though has an additional reason for special permission and permission being granted by the school committee. The only change is the MASC date under the source is being updated. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, policy JFABE, educational opportunities for military children. Again, aligning with MASC, which includes the reference to the interstate compact on educational opportunity for military children under the legal references. Is there any further discussion?
Is that the Mass General Laws 15E?
That's already in, so that one's already there.
Okay.
Yep. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have policy JHD, exclusions and exemptions for school attendance. We are noting the review date as the policy aligns with MASC. We do have an addition of a cross-reference in our policy that MASC does not have, which is policy JFA, which is enrollment of children of non-resident staff as we have that practice. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, policy JICFA, prohibition of hazing. We are noting the review date as it aligns with MASC. We do have a cross-reference to policy JJA, student organizations, and JICFB, anti-bullying. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, policy JII, student complaints and grievances. We're noting the review date as it does align with MASC, with the exception of a cross-reference to policy JIC. Student discipline, we do not currently have that policy. It's something that we may look at in the future. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Policy passes. Policy JJA, student organizations, aligned with MASC. The current policy is mostly aligned. The edits are to change the approval by the principal and superintendent in paragraph 3, using school district instead of school system, and the addition of a cross-reference to the policy JICF, gang activity secret societies. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Policy passes. Next, policy JJH-R1, student travel regulations. We're looking to align with MASC fully, which requires minor wording changes and the addition of a legal references and a legal reference and updated links. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next policy is JLCB, immunization of students. We added a cross-reference and aligned with MASC. We changed the title to immunizations of students. There were minor wording edits, removal of the numerical listing, and removal of the reference to the McKinney-Vento Homeless Act that is covered in another policy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is policy JLCC, which is communicable diseases. Interesting policy timing-wise. Fourth paragraph, the first sentence was updated to align with mask. Other changes were minor worded edits, such as moving from the use of children to what mask is using students in the first paragraph. We split the second paragraph, which was combined with the third, as well as the fourth paragraph, which was combined with the fifth, to be aligned with mask, and reference to the determination requirements in paragraph 4. We are keeping some of our wording that mask does not have. For example, we use child with disabilities instead of mask's use of handicapped child, and that the determination referenced in the last paragraph being by the parent or nurse instead of the superintendent, which is per our process. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll get into section C, policy CA, administration goals. We're looking to align with mask. Our current policy is very different, with references to other policies and references to specific dates that are called out in those policies. So those dates are already captured elsewhere, so we thought aligning and going with what the administration recommended, aligning with mask made more sense. So, any further discussion on policy CA? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, policy CB, school superintendent. Again, we want to align with mask. Please note that the policy that was at your table, the last sentence is committee's annual report to the mayor, not selectmen. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, policy CBI, evaluation of the superintendent. We are looking to align with mask. Our current policy defines a lot of our process, the timeline, as well as some of the specifics, while mask's policy focuses more on the purpose of the evaluation. We did discuss whether there was some concern about losing the process. In talking with the chairperson, which was the outcome of the meeting, he did indicate that he's okay with the idea of going to alignment with mask, but we don't want to lose that information. So we are looking to put that into the procedural book as we discussed during the meeting, and we will look to have that come to us in our next meeting. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'll just,
Yeah, please.
the way that we set up the evaluation of the superintendent, it's very much tied into the superintendent's goals, superintendent's progress report, which ties into the district goals, which also ties into our budget process. And so because it's so tied in, while I agree with the importance of aligning with mask, I just want to make sure we don't lose that procedure. So I just ask that it be taken up at the next policy meeting so that
Yep.
can continue going forward.
So we will look at that and try to get it into the procedural book as soon as we can. Beautiful. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next was policy CCB, lines of authority and staff relations. Align with mask was minor wording changes, for example, using district instead of school system. And we are keeping the use of Attleboro School Committee instead of just committee in the first sentence. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is policy CCD, the Attleboro School District. We are doing a title change from chain of command to lines of authority. Mass does not have this policy, but we did discuss about, we thought that we should keep it. The policy, it's effectively a listing of the lines of authority from the school committee down through the administration to principals. We're recommending changing the director of personnel that is listed to the director of human resources to be per what we have, and redesignating the policy over to CCA so that it's in accordance with the NEP and coding system. They have organization charts at CCA, and that's kind of what this is. Any discussion? Please.
Not related to any of the changes that were discussed, but Ms. Regan earlier gave an update on the strategic plan. As part of that group, a lot of the vacant positions that are listed on here, they're not listed as vacant, but there are a lot of positions when you look at these central office roles that badly need to be filled. So I'm excited that this is staying on file, so as almost like a goal chart of sorts.
That's good. Great point.
to fill a lot of those positions.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we did also talk with the administration about maybe in the future expanding this policy to cover other areas of lines of authority than just the school committee, central administration and principals, maybe other areas as well. But for now, is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is policy CE, the administrative leadership teams. Our current policy somewhat aligns with masks, with the exception that we're using the reference to leadership teams instead of cabinets, because that's what we have. We are recommending minor wording changes, such as using they instead of he, she in the first and third paragraphs, the use of district instead of system in the fourth paragraph, as well as the removal of the legal reference in order to be aligned with mask as much as possible. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Policy CH, policy implementation. The policy is already aligned with mass, so no changes were recommended. We're looking to note the review date. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Policy CHA, development of procedures. Again, mostly aligns with mass. Minor wording edits, such as moving from he, she to they, throughout to be fully aligned with masks. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, home stretch. Policy CHC, procedures dissemination. Again, we already aligned with masks, so we're looking to note the review date. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Policy CHD, administration and policy absence. Again, we are aligned with masks, so we're looking to note the review date. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Policy CL, administrative reports. The policy is mostly aligned with mask. Minor wording edits, such as adding the word "the" in the first sentence and switching from to district instead of system in sentence 3. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And the last policy is policy CM, school district annual report. Our policy does not align with masks, as theirs is kind of more general. Our policy references the specifics of what we're doing in district, such as what will be included in the district annual report and the timing of the presentations. Administration recommends that we not align with mask, that we maintain the policy as is and note the review date. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The next part of our meeting, we focused on the school choice, which is coming up very soon. As everybody knows, we do have a special meeting where we put it up to a hearing. But as far as further information regarding school choice, I'll turn it over to the administration.
Thank you. So after we had 2 students who became school choice last year, we continued to do some research, and during that research we learned that of the students who are school choice that are eligible to participate in our CTE programming we would receive about 2/3 of the total funding. And so we are continuing to investigate other options that could support our CTE programs, and namely it is possible for us to reach out to other local districts and reach individual agreements with them, and so that is something that we will continue to actively pursue.
Thank you. We did have a few questions that we posed to the administration that they're going to look into and bring back to us at our next meeting, so we are looking to hold off on that hearing until after our next policy meeting. I put it out to all the members of the subcommittee, and I would do the same for all the members here, that if there's any specific policy that you would like the policy subcommittee to take a look at for any reason, please let me know. I'll look to add it to a future subcommittee meeting. And is there any further questions? Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 2nd, 7 p.m. in this room. And that, Mr. Chairman, concludes my update.
Thank you, Mr. Storrs. Next, we have our report from Finance and Budget. Finance and Budget held their initial meeting on February 5th, at which Mr. Larson was elected once again as chairman. Mr. Chairperson, Mr. Larson, is not here tonight, so I told him I would do my best to fill his shoes and bring forward the motions that were made at the subcommittee meeting last week. And I'd ask Mr. Furtado to just pipe up and explain the rationale and the facts behind each of these. First being, looking for a motion to send to the municipal council for approval to pay prior year invoices in the amount of $236.25, according to the backup that was provided. Have a motion?
So moved. Sorry.
Second.
Mr. Furtado?
Yes, that's, that expense was the result of a, agreement, made with a parent on January 27th. So that's why it's coming to the committee so late.
Agreement with a parent?
Yeah, regarding, transportation, for their student. So, the other part of that was a $80 invoice that was lost by one of the schools that popped up, also last month.
Any questions or discussion? Mr. Demachi?
Just quickly, I know on the note it said that the amount we're voting on is less than what's on the invoices because it's not due to not enough money being encumbered. So we expect that at some later point we're gonna have the balance to vote on, or is?
No, the city will take out the encumbrance we made for parent transportation that does not cover the full amount of the agreement.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the
Sure.
clarification, because I was trying to figure out what that meant, so thank you.
Anyone else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have a motion for the approval of policy JJF, student activity accounts with a limits of $7,000 at the elementary schools, $40,000 at the middle schools, and $80,000 at the high school. This is a motion to approve the policy to establish these accounts. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Furtado?
So, the new policy, of the school committee is to approve these amounts annually, and, we're just going through that process.
Any questions about this process? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we had a motion to allow Camp Ramsbottom to use the Willett parking lot this summer for pickup as drop-offs. The motion?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, Camp Ramsbottom has traditionally used one of our schools. They used to use the high school, but for obvious reasons they can't now. Anything besides that unique this year, Mr. Furtado?
No, they had success using Willow last year, and they're happy to do it again.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And finally, there is a motion to approve to enter into a contract with Train to perform an energy audit to get ready for a performance contract.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Furtado?
Sure. So we put out a request for proposals, or qualifications, I'm sorry, for a performance contract. Had 3 responses. Jason, Brent, and myself did the evaluation. Felt Train had the most responsive response to our request. And what this will lead to is them doing an audit of our facilities, identifying projects that they could do in the confines of a performance contract, which requires the project to be paid for through energy savings over time. There's no money that comes from the district or the city. And they guarantee the results, the efficiency savings, and if they don't meet those numbers, it's their problem, not ours. So we're gonna probably start up small. Once they come up with their list of potential projects, just to see how it goes. And then this could be as much as $4 or $5 million. This is basically and almost primarily exclusively environmental stuff: air conditioning, heating, air handling, digital control of all of the environmental systems throughout the district. So on our CIP, we have about $4 million worth of work that we need done.
When would they be doing this audit?
The audit would happen as soon as the contract is signed, which is fairly quickly, and then they would probably hope to have a shovel in the ground on some of this work in August.
Any questions, Mr. Geddes?
This was the blessing was given for this by this city a year and a half ago.
Yep.
So they'll also be looking at some of the city buildings. Do you remember which ones those
We
were?
included one city building. It was up. We could have included as many as we wanted. They just chose one, the Larson Center, where
Yep.
the Council on Aging is.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Furtado. That concludes the finance and budget report and the rest of the subcommittee reports. Next on our agenda, we have open forum. Is there anyone here who would like to address the committee at open forum? No, there's not, so I'll close open forum. Does anyone else have any business before the school committee? Not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Steve, Mrs. Simon sends her regards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was up visiting me and she asked specifically about you. I meant to say that earlier, so I sat here through the whole meeting.
I was gonna say
Thank you for doing that.
We don't always have a live audience.
Well, you know what? You were one of her favorites.
Wow.
Aw.
There you go.
Yes.
That was Mr. Sawyer's favorite, too.
Without question.
You're luck here. Mrs. Simon.
Thank you very much. Tell her I said hello next
I
time.
told her how well you were doing, and she was like, oh, that's wonderful. It's always nice for us to hear
I did.
how well our kids are doing in life.
I was just a public,
Well, at least mine came over.
fine community. I was thinking it's red.
Do you see what they did?
Sorry, you couldn't
So,
be.
wait, here's the funny thing, I don't know if you saw. So, we just found out that we thought we would get 13 or 15,000, we got 5. They just approved it. They just went through school choice.
I saw that they did that.
I was just talking about how North Attleboro just approved school choice after, like, it was like the day after we found out that we're getting 1/3 of what we thought we were gonna get.